This is episode 90. Today we're talking about how to make money, a significant amount of money, while just working a job. Because oftentimes you'll hear individuals talk about like, okay, you need an entrepreneur if you want to get rich. Create your startup company if you want to be rich. Tech industry and all these things if you want to be rich. But you don't necessarily need to start a business. You don't necessarily need to be an entrepreneur. I mean, this is like the century of entrepreneurship, and now we need entrepreneurs because entrepreneurs create jobs, but everybody shouldn't be an entrepreneur. You have to be hardworking, patient, and persistent. There's a lot of stress being an entrepreneur, and many things such as that. And what's wrong with just going to a job and coming home and chilling? What's fundamentally wrong with that? Take care of your kids, hang out with your friends. What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. And every business needs employees. So this video is talking about just some of the legal strategies and business strategies you can use to be able to, as an employee, to be able to make just as much money, if not more, than entrepreneurs. So we're talking about that in this video today. What's up, guys? Thank you for tuning in. If you've been watching the news lately, you saw Peter Thiel. He was one of the co-founders of PayPal. He recently made headlines because he had $5 billion tax-free in his IRA. $5 billion. I mean, that's a significant amount of money that a person can have in their IRA, and it'll end up being tax-free. When he turns 59, he'll get all of that money back tax-free. And how did a guy really do something like that? I mean, an IRA is typically for like people who are sitting like one of those investment vehicles, like a 401k, like a pension, where you typically are working for a company. But there's a thing that he did. Because there's a certain income requirement for the IRA. When PayPal was just starting, he was one of the, I believe he was the CEO. He definitely was an executive in the company. And at that time, currently today, if you make under $140,000 as a single person, make less than $140,000 in 2021, you can have your IRA. And then with that, if you don't touch the money until you're 59 and a half, you'll get that money back tax-free. And that's what Peter Thiel did. And you can do that as well. But the thing about it was, at that time, Peter Thiel didn't make a lot of money with PayPal. It was a startup, and they held some money out, mainly to reinvest into the company. And they paid him a salary that he qualified with that. And this is the thing that he did. Now, what he did was, with that salary he bought more PayPal stock. We're going to talk about that later on. But he bought more PayPal stock before it went on the stock market. Now, that's the key to it all. You want to buy these companies before they hit the stock market. Now, I'm going to tell you what companies you can do that with. So as an employee, you can do the same thing. Now that's really how you're using the tax laws to your advantage, because that's exactly what he did. You can do the same thing too. And the thing was that he had already paid taxes on them. So the money he put into his IRA, he had already paid taxes into it. So he used that money to buy PayPal stock. So when PayPal went in the stock market and increased in price, all that difference, that increase, is tax-free now. So that is using the tax laws, the tax rules that the IRS has, and that the government has, and that the SEC has, to your advantage. And these are some things you can do. Like, you don't have to come up with a fancy idea. I mean, you can do these things yourself. And I really want to talk about that. And with the IRA, you can invest in stocks, mutual funds, real estate too. I have a lot of real estate law videos and how you can use some of your IRA money to invest into real estate. I mean, you don't necessarily have to do all these fancy things, come up with a fancy idea. I mean, I know tech is very important. Innovation is very important, but you don't necessarily have to do any of these things. I mean, that's a quick one way to do that, because like I say, you have to have the temperament to be an entrepreneur, and everyone doesn't necessarily have that temperament. So that's what you do. And many times before you invest into these companies, you have to be an accredited investor. Now, that's one thing you'll hear a lot. You hear the word accredited investor. So the government set up all these laws in place to protect the average person. So the belief is that if you don't necessarily qualify as an accredited investor, you shouldn't invest into these companies because you're not necessarily a sophisticated investor. So let's talk about some of the rules that you can do to be an accredited investor. It's based on Rule 501, Regulation D of the U.S. Securities Exchange Commission laws. So these are the laws of the SEC. So if you qualify as an accredited investor, you can invest in some of these pre-IPO companies that, like Peter Thiel did. And first thing you have to have is it's multiple ways to be an accredited investor. One way is to make over $200,000 a year. You have to do that for like the last 2 years. But if you're married, it can be joint income of $300,000. That's a significant amount of money for a lot of people. So you may not qualify under that. Another way is you can have a net worth of $1 million. That's another significant hurdle that's maybe difficult to for a lot of people to be able to meet. But here's an interesting one. You can have a specialized knowledge. So these are some things you can do. And if you're a company, private business development, or an organization, you must have assets. Your assets must exceed $5 million. So those are typically the ways that you can become an accredited investor. And like I said, I mean, you can do these things. I mean, one way you can, like I said, the key is to invest into companies before they get put on the stock market. That's the game. It doesn't require you being an entrepreneur at all. And it's not the only way, but that's one of the ways. And it's a website you can go to where you can invest into these companies. Equities In is a website you can go to. Link to is another site you can go to where you can invest into companies that you've heard of. I mean, you heard of things like Impossible Foods. You've heard of things like Robinhood. You heard of these companies that are making a lot of money, but they just haven't been put on the stock market. And these companies are going to the stock market. They're definitely going to be on the stock market. So you can invest into companies like that. You're like Ripple. I mean, there's many companies that you can be involved. I know Coinbase. It was like the first crypto industry company. It was worth over $1 billion when it IPO'd. You could have bought into that before it went on the stock market. And these are the things you can do. And that doesn't require working a job. I mean, everyone necessarily shouldn't work a job. I mean, and that's another thing you can do. I mean, and even if you can't necessarily become an accredited investor on this list, one thing you can do is you can get life insurance. You can maximize your life insurance. You have to talk to a life insurance agent. You have to review your life insurance contract. So that's from the legal perspective of it. But the idea is that if you can just get as much life insurance as you possibly can afford, it doesn't matter. I mean, you can be working a part-time job at like McDonald's or whatever. It doesn't necessarily matter. But if something bad happened to you, or when you pass, your children or your loved ones won't necessarily have to struggle the way you did. So I'm definitely an advocate of life insurance. Life insurance is very, very important, and that's one way you can pass on money to your descendants. That's very, very important. So, but that's pretty much all I have. But I did want to talk about just the idea of you don't necessarily need to be an entrepreneur. You can leverage the intelligence of other people who are starting businesses. And one way to do that is by investing in companies before they get on the stock market, pre-IPO. The IPO is an initial public offering. This is before the companies file their S1 legal document. They file the S1 document to start the process of getting on the stock market. And this is in the U.S., so you can invest into these companies. I mean, these companies they need money, and you can be a part of it. And I can't stress that enough, that you don't necessarily have to be an entrepreneur. And don't let anyone shame you for not being an entrepreneur. I mean, we need more entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs create jobs, but everyone shouldn't be an entrepreneur. I mean, everyone shouldn't be an entrepreneur. You can look at these companies, like I heard of Impossible Foods. I've heard of these companies, and you can invest into these companies. I mean, you can invest however much you want. So, but again, that's all I have to sort of recap what we talked about. We talked about just some of the tax laws that are in place. We talked about that Peter Thiel used in the IRA to make his money tax free. We talked about the importance of investing in companies before they get on the stock market, being an accredited investor as the laws of the Security Exchange Commission, the SEC in the U.S., which is a very powerful organization. We talked about the benefits of getting life insurance and reviewing the life insurance contract with your real estate agent, and things like that. The idea is that you want to pass things on to your heirs, and one way you can do that is in your will. That's a legal document, or you put into a trust. I mean, I have an estate plan bundle for sale. You get a will, get a living trust, and things like that. And the trust is private. For example, if you fill out a will, when you die, someone has to file that in court. And then once you file it in court in America is public records. Anyone who think they have an interest in your will can go to the court, and they can look at your will to see what's in your will. A lot of people don't necessarily want everyone in their business, particularly if you're like a celebrity or something like that. So they'll do a trust, and the trust is private. And then that's when you can pass your belongings, pass your money, pass everything down to your descendants, your children, or your loved ones, or your loved ones. So these are some of the legal devices and legal things that you can do to ensure that you are protected and your family is protected after you leave. So, but that's all I have. So hope you all have enjoyed this video. This is episode 90, and we're one step closer to 1,000 episodes. Thanks.